The G20, therefore, was founded on the principle of cooperation, of working together, of collaboration. At this time of global uncertainty and escalating tension, it is now more important than ever that the members of the G20 should work together. The erosion of multilateralism presents a threat to global growth and stability. We know from the experience of past decades that a fair, transparent, and inclusive rules-based international order is in the end an essential requirement for economic stability and for sustained growth. At this time of heightened geopolitical contestation, a rules-based order is particularly important as a mechanism, as a way for managing disputes and resolving conflicts. There will always be disputes, there will always be conflicts, but as humanity, we have always found a way to resolve those conflicts. It is vital to ensuring that the rights and interests of the vulnerable are not trampled beneath the ambitions of the powerful. Multilateral cooperation is our only hope of overcoming unprecedented challenges, including slow and uneven growth, rising debt burdens and levels, persistent poverty in many parts of the world, and inequality, and the existential threat of climate change. We are not moving quickly enough and even boldly enough to address the challenges that the world is facing. We must collectively target a step change in our efforts to improve the lives of the peoples of the world, but more importantly, to protect future generations. One of the greatest impediments to growth, to development and stability is the persistence of inequality within and between nations. The pursuit of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal of reducing inequality is as much of an economic imperative as a social imperative. So as the G20, we need deliberate and coordinated efforts to focus on inclusive growth based on responsive trade and investment to grow the incomes of poor nations and the poorest in society. And this we should do in our own selfish interests. We need to ensure equal access to opportunities, especially for women and young people, as clearly set out in the UN Sustainable Development Goal. For nations to flourish, equality and prosperity must be available to everyone, regardless of their gender, of their race, their religious beliefs, or economic status. The pursuit of equality is in the end an imperative for wealthy and poor countries alike. That is why South Africa has placed solidarity, equality, as well as sustainability at the center of its G20 presidency, in line with the original mandate of the G20 to promote strong, sustainable, balanced, and economic growth. South Africa has identified 4 priorities for its G20 presidency. Our first priority is to take action to strengthen disaster resilience and response. The world is now prone to disasters, both in the developed economy world as well as in the developing economy part of the world. The increasing rate of climate induced natural disasters is disproportionately affecting countries that can least afford the costs of recovery and rebuilding. And you talk to any African leader, they will tell you that as disaster strikes, as bridges are washed away, as schools and hospitals are washed away with floods that they have never seen before, that they know now emanate from climate change. They are not able to rebuild those roads, those bridges with greater ease without imposing a great debt burden on their economies, which pushes out the ambitions for further development. When repeated disasters lead to widespread damage of infrastructure, economic activity is disrupted and livelihoods are destroyed. Innovative financing and insurance mechanisms must be put in place by the global community, the financial institutions, development banks, and the private sector to scale up funding for disaster prevention and post-disaster reconstruction. This is an area we do believe the G20 needs to address and to find solutions for. Our second priority is to ensure debt sustainability for developing economies. In recent years, low and middle income countries have seen their levels of foreign or sovereign debt and the costs of financing that debt rise substantially. The combined external debt stock of low-income countries more than doubled in the decade to 2022. Debt service costs are increasingly crowding out spending on education, on healthcare, and other social services, as well as infrastructure that are needed for the economic development in those countries. The work of the International Financial Architecture Working Group and other working groups will be particularly important in improving the common framework for debt treatment, accelerating the reform of multilateral development banks, and strengthening capital flows to emerging markets. Our G20 presidency will be addressing the high cost of capital faced by developing economy countries as one of the main barriers to sustainable growth.